Hey folks, welcome to Freepcast. I am KEYC, sitting here with managing editor of the Mankato Free Press, Joe Spear. We're joining you here on November 6th, 2024.
Big day after the election. We have recovered from our late night. It wasn't too bad, though. I think we had all of our results we wanted to have on the press at 12:30, like we were expecting to, hoping to. The results from Blue Earth and Nicollet County came in pretty well, faster than 2 years ago. I think they straightened out a few things on their procedures. So, yeah, it's always great when we can get most, if not all, of the results in the print edition. Of course, people can always go to our website and find all the results online at whatever time suits their fancy. If they want to look at them at 3 a.m., they can.
Which you were updating stuff still about right around that time.
Well, and we've got all our automated links to the Secretary of State site, so they're updating every 10 minutes throughout the night, I believe. So if you're a real political junkie, that helps your cause there. But I don't know if there were a lot of surprises. I mean, the polls said the national presidential race was going to be tight, and it was. As we know, it got called for former President Trump early this morning. I feel like it was between 3 and 5 a.m. And just some other things coming in. And locally, the race that's always tight is the 18A race. It covers St. Peter and North Mankato for the State House of Representatives. Jeff Brand was going against challenger Erica Schwartz, the Republican. And this race has gone back and forth between Republican and Democratic hands the last 3 elections. So it flipped again. It flipped to Erica Schwartz, who had a strong showing, and will be a new freshman. And the Minnesota House looks like it's going to be evenly split, 67-67.
Right down the middle. Yeah, it should be an interesting challenge to get.
Happen that often, yeah. Although Ed was telling me about it happening in 1979. So it'll be interesting. And then the Minnesota Senate is still in Democratic hands. But you were out covering last night with the rest of us. We were all on our phones and on our watching the results come in. But you were out taking photos. What were you finding? What from you went early in the morning and then you hit some watch parties later?
Yeah, it was first of all, it was really interesting and cool to be able to work with everybody. It was all hands on deck. Everybody had their hands full with something. Just to see our newsroom working that way and firing in all cylinders, and everybody just had their role. It was cool to be part of that.
Yeah, that's the first time you've probably been part of that.
Yeah, in
your first election
to that level, because I'd worked in newsrooms before, but just kind of as a lone wolf. So being part of that operation was really cool to see and great to be part of. But being out on the field, I got up rather early. Got out to Rapidan by 7 o'clock when the polls opened, and I wanted to get a good mix of rural and more cosmopolitan, because this was an election that really exemplified that. So getting out to Rapidan early for some sunrise photos was a very intentional decision.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and it was a great photo. I vote at the Rapidan Township Hall, and it's an old style white building, typical town hall building.
Yeah, it really feels like old school politics when you're out there.
It does. And so that was a great shot with the morning light just breaking through, and there's some kind of darkness in the air as well. But that's a great way to think of the photos, because this area is rural and urban. And to show that on election day is one of our goals always.
Yeah, definitely. We want to speak to everybody who is a potential or long-time reader, and so didn't want to miss anybody in this. And this was definitely the election to cast a wide net on, for sure.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the other results, well, as you say, the newsroom setup, people don't think about this much, and one of the purposes of this podcast is for us to tell them how we work sometimes. But the operation in a newsroom on election night has to be very precise and timed. Everybody has their role. Everybody knows what race they're watching. We have a plan we put in place ahead of time based on when we think the votes are going to come in. And I've done this for a few years and not always getting it right. But we look to the smaller races where there's maybe a county commissioner and there's only 5 precincts. Okay, so that can be counted fast. So maybe that's one of the ones you put early on your deadline. And then the bigger races like school board that go across 3 or 4 counties, you put that at the end, hoping you'll maximize the time for getting the most complete results. And that is actually pretty much how it played out last night. We got the North Mankato races early. We got the Blue Earth County Board race early. We had to wait till the end for the school board. And the last remaining precinct, I believe, was Eagle Lake, that I think came in around 11:30 or so. We were doing well on our deadline the whole night. So we were hitting our deadlines, and so we had a little leeway. But it still can really force you into a decision, too. Like, do you wait 5 more minutes for that last result to come in so you're complete? Or do you go because the copy desk and the press room is getting nervous and you got to get that paper on the...
Rewinding a bit, because, the plan that we had in place for, who's carrying, who's covering what, and, what the time... It's a well-oiled machine, and just going to that planning phase, this isn't something that just happens. Oh, it's election night. We better come up with something. No, this was weeks in advance. We had our MO and our directives, and we stuck to them. And I thought from where I was sitting, at least, it was a pretty well-oiled machine.
Yeah, you have to look at. There's two that you make a planning sheet, you make a budget, you have something that people can look at. When is my story due? How long is it supposed to be? What is the specific slug of that story, so we can find it in the system? I mean, it's a lot of minutia, but it's necessary. And then I lay out a timeline for the deadlines, and I order it by beginning to last, and then you look who's covering what. So you want to make sure one person doesn't have a deadline that's 5 minutes apart for 2 things. So you spread them out. So you got to do all of this kind of planning, and it's really kind of a pain, but it's what you have to do to minimize the chaos on election night.
So going to the elections themselves and the results therein. So what are you noticing? This is a result. Donald Trump, of course, getting reelected for a non-consecutive term. Does this election feel different fundamentally from 2016 and 2020, respectively?
Yeah, I think so. I think the turnout is surprising in each one of those elections, and that often dictates how the races will go. The turnout was high again. We're doing a story for tomorrow's paper about what that turnout was and how much more came on one side, how much more came on the other side. There was a lot of talk in this election about young people for the first time going out to vote, and I haven't seen real great analysis of it yet, but everybody thought a young person's going to vote Democratic, but I think we found, at least anecdotally from several places, they were voting for Trump. So that's interesting and different and something to be watched, I think. We had fewer races locally to cover than we did 2 years ago or 4 years ago, so that, of course, makes it easier. The Minnesota Senate was not up. So there are House races, and then the big school board race was the big one. And then we thought there was going to be some competition in one city council race for the at-large seat in Mankato. Turns out it wasn't that different. But you can be surprised by some of these things from time to time. And I'm just, looking back, if anything sticks out about this race, I guess I feel like it's everybody turned out to vote, and that's a good thing. So it means we're all participating. We all sort of believe it. And there were very few glitches. There were very few disruptions that I know of.
Safety came up in Georgia a little bit, but the safety of the polling places didn't seem to make anyone's radar to a significant degree, which was good. Do we have a sense? This was, of course, a rather emotionally charged election. I mean, they all are, but something about this election was certainly emotionally charged. Do we have a sense for how the political groups on both sides are planning to react to this in any way meaningfully?
Yeah, I've just been reading some things this morning. Obviously, in the state legislature, looks like it's going to be split, although Democrats still have the Senate and the governor's office. So, I think they're already talking about, we know we have to work together because nothing else gets done if we don't. So it's good to see that. At the federal level, it's interesting. They say the House is still up for grabs, although the Republicans have the Senate and, the presidency now. So that'll be interesting to see how much gets done there. I don't think we've had, or maybe we did in Trump's first term, everything Republican, and that's when they passed the big tax cuts in 2017 and so forth. So, yeah, I think everybody has to take a step back and look at why people who thought that were gonna vote for you didn't, and why others did, and what the hot button issues were, and of course, the Roe v. Wade reproductive rights. This was the first presidential election where that played in, and I think it still had a big role, but it seems like it wasn't talked about quite as much as some of the other things.
Yeah, lots to keep an eye on, and it's obviously as we get closer to Inauguration Day, a lot of chips will fall into place, and we'll be certain to keep our eye on all of those things.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Now this is historic. A president was out one term and is back in. That only happened one time before in our history with Grover Cleveland, and I think his government is going to be a lot different than it was the first time. So we'll have to watch that and see how that plays out with some various characters, high-profile characters like Elon Musk and such, going to take major roles. So it'll be interesting and something to keep us in the news business. So we hope you keep subscribing and listening to our great journalism and election coverage. But we have some other news that did happen in the last week or so.
Yeah, to the end of the news business locally, KEYC merged with their sister station in Rochester, leading to a series of layoffs and changing the local media landscape.
Yeah, really in a big way that I've never seen since I've been here. It looks like about 12 reporters were let go, and that's a huge number for a town like this. And sports, I think they kept a lot of their sports people. But, we could say, that's great for us, less competition. But it's really not great for us. The fewer journalists anywhere is not a good thing. So it looks like it was corporate restructuring. And TV news is so important because a lot of people rely on TV news. It's mostly free now unless you have a huge cable bill or whatever. But it served its purpose, and they had KEYC had people out in the local community, doing local stories, covering local government, covering crime. So, yeah, that's going to be a real change to the news landscape. And of course, there's another news outlet still in town you can go to, and that's us. And we appreciate any readership we can get.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, all that is not even to mention the individuals that when we're out in the field covering the same events that they're covering, we bump into these people. We become, if not friends, acquaintances with them. So these are people we know on a personal level to some degree as well. So seeing that change will, we can only hope that they find some good avenue to use their talents, and we can hope that Mankato and the surrounding areas can get some news coverage that we so desperately need.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. News coverage is more important than ever, now in these times. Had a good Sunday story last week. Brian Arla wrote about continuing saga. Local landlord, city took over many of his properties because they were unsafe and not livable. And one of them finally got condemned, and the people had to move out in short notice. And so Brian had that story and kind of the background and what progress the city is making on some of these properties. So that's good to see. We're shedding some light on it, letting people know what their government is doing, and housing is a big deal for people.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting too that 123 North 4th is the property listed, and my wife actually used to live in that building, and when she was there, 7 or some odd years ago, it was in fine condition, living condition. So it's remarkable how quickly some of these things can change, and how much we need to keep our eye on some of these things as they're evolving.
It's just a maintenance thing. I believe I knew someone when I was in college, and that's 30 years ago, that lived in that building. So, but I was surprised at how many. We had a big story a couple of months ago that Mark Fishnick did on detailing all the properties, and there was numerous properties. I feel like there was in the range of 20 around town that they really had to shore up. So, housing is a big deal in this town, and the need for it is really exceptional, and need all the housing we can get. But here we had, 20, 30 people now that need housing. And I know the Connection Shelter told us they connected up with some of them and are starting to get some of them in a place where they can at least have a temporary staying place. Another cool story, 7th grader needed a heart transplant and just came about it suddenly, kind of one of those strange things. He wasn't feeling well, told the parents, and they went to the doctor. First doctor kind of looked at, well, it's just cold or something. But eventually they got a scan, and he had a very enlarged heart. Need a heart transplant right away, and this happened so fast, even by the time we got to the story, he had already had his transplant. And so we did a nice interview with him and his family. And again, one of the great stories, why we do these stories like this, is it shows how the community came and helped his family and, had so much support for family going through this. As we can imagine, we all would need support, and they were so thankful. And it's just good to highlight stories like that because it tells people, hey, there's good news happening. There's good things happening. There's good people around. We still live in a community where sometimes it may seem like there's a lot of bad things going on. There's also a lot of good things. And that's one of the good purposes of a newspaper.
Yeah,
as well.
Definitely. And stories like that also remind us that the people that we're talking to for any story are, in fact, people, and these things reflect their daily lives. So stories like this are often very sobering for us as the people writing them or photographing them, that these are people's lives that we're entering.
Yeah, and it just reminds me, we're actually going to do a section for the Thanksgiving Day paper that's going to be called Good News, and it's going to be filled with stories like this that we have done in the past year. And so if you really want to get your happiness satisfied on Thanksgiving Day, pick up that paper because it's going to be a section full of good news stories. And if you want to support that, you can call our advertising department. I know they are taking ads for it and such. It'll be a cool little project. We've never tried it before, but it just struck me one day thinking about it. People don't realize how much good news is happening. So we're going to really kind of highlight it, and it should be a cool section.
Yeah, I think so. And I think for us in the newsroom too, it'll be fulfilling and enriching and probably refreshing in
right,
a lot of
uplifting.
Cases.
You don't always like to do sad stories or crime stories or things where bad people happen. It's part of kind of a uplifting experience for the journalists to do these kind of stories as well, because people are so sincere about helping out when they're needed.
Yeah, and certainly, and I think one thing that sometimes doesn't get mentioned is the fact that when we're done writing these stories, we maybe the story runs for a day and then it's kind of on to the next thing. But we are often thinking about these people months or years after the fact. So to be part of their lives
right.
and tell these stories it's a uniquely fulfilling opportunity.
Yeah, so that'll be really cool. And I think the news will be settling down a little bit here now that the election is over. We all hope that. We all hope there's a little quiet period and everybody can take a breath and see what's coming up next. And that's often turns us to doing fun things like going to sports games. Maverick hockey split with Bemidji last weekend, I believe. So it's a tough team. They lost 1-0 the first game. They came back 2-1. So they're just hanging in there. Maverick hockey's hanging in there. I know they've been in the top 20 in the rankings, but of course we got swept and beat by Bemidji last year, and they won the McNaughton Cup, and we did not. So a tough team always, and going up to Bemidji. East football had a tough game to go to state. They lost on a close game. Great season for them though, and you shot photos and saw the spirit of that team.
Yeah, certainly. This was the year that East was going to really make an impact. And when I heard the result of the game, the first thing that came to my mind was the section championship last year with Mankato West facing off against Chanhassen and that sort of Hail Mary play that ended the run for West. And that was the first thing that came to my mind when I heard that result. And then I click on Chad's story and I see that was the comparison he made. And I just thought that was so apt and heartbreaking loss, but definitely nothing to hang their head on this season. They played well and they really represented themselves well.
Absolutely. And cross country on East took third in the state, so they won a championship last 2 years, but took third. Going to be rebuilding next year, so it's great to see that team too. I always like to give a shout out to the less popular sports that people don't always go to all the big games. They have big crowds, but they're still athletes doing their best for their school and for themselves. Fun to see. So I think that's going to wrap up this edition of Freepcast. We want to thank you for listening. As always, call us with story ideas or questions. We are looking for a sponsor for this podcast, so you could call our advertising department at 344-6364. Your business could be associated with all the great journalism we talk about and the community news we provide people every week. And we've been doing this since April or May, I think. So we're starting to put up a big number. We're starting to have a good following. You've watched the analytics on it, and a lot more people are tuning in. We got a video that goes up on YouTube, so people are watching that.
Yep, and if you are watching this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe so you can get more videos like this and many others that are currently in the pipeline. They'll be launching every week.
And I know Rob Murray, who's taking a break from this week. He is planning to do some of his longer, in-depth podcasts with community members, and those were done about 4 years ago, and they were really cool. So you just got to know in-depth people maybe you saw every day. And he's going to start doing that again, people in business, people in entertainment, musicians, artists. And so that'll be really cool, something to look forward to. But we also want to encourage you to subscribe to the Free Press. You might want to be checking it out now that you're looking for another news source. You can subscribe to an online-only subscription by going to our website, just hitting the subscription button. You sign up right there, or you can call Reader Services at 625-3764 or email us readerservice@mankatofreepress.com. Don't forget, you can also get reprints of our great photos in the Free Press. We work with our partner SPX Sports. You can also order that right online by clicking on our website, photo reprints. It'll take you to the SPX Sports homepage. You can look over all the photos we got there, or you can call them 345-7196. And other than that, I think that's about all we have.
I think so.
Thanks for listening, folks.
Thank you.